unit holding this country together, if he pulled out, if he didn't wake up one single day, not because he overslept, but because he's run out of breath, there will be absolute pandemonium in this country. So for a very long time, for the last 2 years, I've been asking Yoweri Museveni that if he could give the mandate to somebody else while he's still alive, it could be his wife, it could be Salim Saleh, it could be his son, that, it's a reminder. Odinga's death is a reminder that death is real, and at the age of 80, ailments, you get knocked out from the most unexpected of conditions. You see, so that was a reminder for me from the passing of Raila Omolo Odinga. But then there's another point. This relates to my love affair with Kizza Besigye, and the fact that, Odinga didn't hold in political office. In the life of a country, it comes to a point that we need to appreciate that those who held that country together were people in the opposition, never held in single office. It has been my submission for a very long time that the unit that held Uganda together has been Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye without taking political office. Because what Colonel Kizza Besigye has done, especially in the 3 elections where he had cult status, there were calls for him to plunge this country into violence by choosing to resist this government violently. But this man resisted, even with threats to his life. He resisted this temptation for about 15 years. This is why, this accusation that he was trying to, go to Nairobi, find a way of getting weapons and then come and overthrow Madam Museveni in cold blood, as Andrew Mwenda used to say, are all stupid. Because this man is old now. In 2001, in 2006, in 2011, when he was younger, and there were absolute threats to his life, and he had a cult following. You think for a second, 1985, when Museveni lost, he didn't have a cult following. But he went to the bush, and he was able to actually win, but the amount of havoc he caused to this country is unimaginable. So think for a second that we had Kizza Besigye, 2001 to 2006, where he had a cult following, that even some sources have said he actually won these elections. But this man said, I will challenge the outcome through a judicial process, even when he knew that he will not succeed. He chose a democratic path. Kizza Besigye has held Uganda together by choosing to continue democracy, even when he knew he would lose. That is the genius of Raila Amolo Odinga to Nairobi, to Kenya. And this is why he had this cult status. So I started thinking about Odinga's death through our own Kizza Besigye, that he was a kingmaker without an office. So has been Dr. Kizza Besigye, that he has been the man holding this country together. In fact, I worry when Kizza Besigye was very frail back at the beginning of his incarceration. We worried that he might die in office, and if he were to die in office, he would die in prison. Then Museveni will get a shock of his life that this man actually held this country together, and it wasn't him. We debate the nitty-gritties of somebody's manifesto as if really in our political dispensation issues matter to the so-called voter. I think it bothers me that when you look at the previous campaign in 2021, what Bobi Wine managed to craft was the genius of a non-issue-led politics. One item will get him seven out of power. One single item, no other issues were getting this man out of power. I think that was a brilliant campaign. So we got the thing they called the wave, because the wave didn't matter the identity of somebody behind the wave. Most of the people who successfully voted, the voters didn't even know how they looked like. So the wave was driven on non-issue based. So I think the genius of the Museveni campaign is to box Kyagulanyi into trying to articulate issues, because issues don't really matter. That's my first point. The second point is that I really wish the thing was real. I really wish, when you sit and you watch the crowds that Bobi Wine was able to put together, you wish this was real. But if all these people voted, their votes counted. You really wish it was real. You know, as all of us around this table know, that the counting matters most than the actual voting.
Actually, they're announcing.
You know, that we go through the thing, all the fanfare and the emotions that are raised, and the labors and money and sometimes lives lost. We're not yet there into that moment. I guess I hear said that, you know, he's happy the campaign is lackluster. It supposedly looks peaceful to a degree, but I think we are not yet there at that critical moment, because you see, this state is fish and what's it called, carrot and stick. At that critical moment, it's ready to meet violence into its adversary. So I don't think we're really yet into the throes and thick of the campaign. I think at this moment it's still exciting, but I really wish it was real, that this thing actually mattered, that if these voters took to the ballot, you know, their votes counted. I wish it were real, but as we know, it's a circus, and I worry that, you know, we all sign up to this circus, we go into it, it's exciting, there's so much energy, and the atmosphere is really frenzied. It doesn't really matter. I really wish it was real.
You know, it's people like you, Dr. Yusuf Sserunkuuma, who discourage people from actually turning up to vote. You know, there's a certain number of voters, about 45%, 46%, who actually never turn up to vote. And one would say it's because of people like you.
But it's not my opinion. This is a legitimate opinion. Now that you even cite...
You can imagine how many people follow your opinion here on radio, but also in the Observer.
No, as a scholar, opinions tend to be from the bottom up, not from this way down. You know, I'm a researcher, so which means I follow trends in the public opinion and then, you know, harmonize them into an opinion. The third point I wanted to say, and I think I'll stop it here for now, is that this is the season that Museveni fears most. It's the season. You see, for me, I really think that it's not the opposition political players, but Museveni fears this season, because this season is the only time that Museveni allows people opposed to him to freely roam the country. And the closer they come to Uganda, the more they are likely to change what they're looking for in this season. When Bagwere comes closer to the seat of government, say closer to Nakasero or closer to Entebbe, we'll need to see the actual face of this government, what it means to go through this electoral process. Because for me, I think it's not what the opposition people are able to do or not to do, but the season is, there's so many moving parts. The season is very fluid, that at one point, if people gathered in Kawempe, campaign for Kyagulanyi, and they're like maybe 20,000 people, and they're like, forget this election, let's just walk to Nakasero. You see, that worries Museveni more, because this is an open season that they're able to actually gather in huge numbers. Now think of that moment, that maybe they're in Luwero, or they're in Bagwere, or they're in Entebbe, and they decide to change their interest in the electoral process to say, we're not looking for victory. We're not the victory. We're not the ones counting the election, right? My friend Kakwenza Urukirwasheja has been tweeting quite a lot about the biography of the head of the electoral commission. You see, he was a prosecutor, a Guinness in favor of Museveni's positions. Now he's the head of the counting, right? So if the oppositions fully get the bravery to say, this is a stupid election. Now that we've gathered in Entebbe, rather in Bagwere, and we've gathered in Kawempe, we can just overwhelm with these people. And I think that's when we see the true face of this government, because this is the season that Museveni fears most, because that thing becomes a possibility in this season.
All right, Spectrum Extra. NRM has boxed NUP into an issue-based campaign, and you seem to suggest that probably it's not a good thing on the side of NUP. Are you saying they are not able to articulate policies? Have you looked at their manifesto, or am I getting your analysis wrong, Dr. Sserunkuuma?
Okay, I hope I didn't carry too long respond to your question, because I think Paul needs to come in. You see, people power was born in a context. The context was not issues. And I gave you a history of 2021, that the wave wasn't about issues. It was about the idea that people power presents a possibility of kicking Museveni out of office. That was the idea. And that idea is still on the table. Now the challenge for NUP has been to craft itself as embodying that same idea. And that's been a challenge because after 5 years in power, in Parliament, they've sort of crafted an identity, an issue-based identity. You see, they seem to be like, we can now talk issues, we can talk policy, we can talk governance, we can talk, but their original brooding wasn't about issues. This is why I wrote in the work of 2021 that they had been voted, because the question was, how come NUP gave these people, many of the successful candidates can't speak English, they can't articulate issues, and I argued their voting was not to debate. They were successful to resist. Parliament was the battleground. Now, after 5 years, they've sort of shifted their identity, and they are weak on that turf.
What would you tell somebody who actually tells you that the long stay of President Museveni in power is an issue itself, is an election issue?
Exactly. Now, the challenge... articulated in their manifesto. No, the challenge now is that in 2021, they ably crafted slogans, which embodied a single idea. We are kicking the man out of office. That single issue, if you could call it a single issue, they've been moved away from that single issue. Now, I was actually sort of bamboozled that we are now spending so much time debating NUP manifesto. We didn't do that in the last election. We have so much time to examine it. NUP functionaries are being challenged to explain it, because they're not being pushed into issues. In this country, we have one issue which matters. One, it's not policy, it's not technocratic. It's about the long stay of Museveni and when does he leave.
All right. One more question before I actually bring in Honorable Paul Muiru. One of the major criticisms that NUP has been facing is that if you remove Museveni, what next? And they are responding to providing the answer.
That's a technical. That's for you technocrats. Yeah. You're the ones asking, and I can tell you, to ask NUP that question, you're asking them the wrong question, because their job is to kick Museveni out of office. Their birth and the People Power movement was simply to get Museveni out of office, and then after that we will debate what happens next. We'll debate. In fact, I argued that People Power was a project, was sort of a suicide mission. It dies in success or in failure. People Power had to disappear either with the success of its mission or in failure of its mission. Museveni has to get up. If you fail to remove him, you have to transform yourselves into something else. Now, the transformation is happening, but they're struggling to... It's not part of their birth. They're not born to be an issue-led politics.
Can I give you information?
All right.
Yes, sir.
All right.